Hey students, in this video I'm going to go over what Pythagorean theorem is and how to use it. Pythagorean theorem is a formula that was created to find a missing side of a right triangle. You must be given two sides in order for you to be able to find that missing side. The A and B in the formula are going to be representing the legs of the triangle, and I've been showing you in class to highlight where the L is created in that triangle, and those are your legs. The other side that's right across the 90-degree, that is the C value, and it's called the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is known to be the longest side of the triangle. So even if you're not given a sketch, just know that the longest side is your hypotenuse. Also, if you are given a sketch, it's always across the 90-degree. Okay. The formula, like I said, is a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and you could be using it in examples like the following, which are whenever you're missing a hypotenuse or when you're missing a leg. Or below that, we have some shapes that are composite figures created by several shapes put together. And through analysis, you realize that you can use Pythagorean theorem to find the missing side. So we'll get to those in a little bit. In the back of this paper, you do have some real world scenarios also, the application part of Pythagorean theorem. So we'll go over a couple of those as well. Okay, so for the first one, this one, like I said, if I highlight the L, that creates the A and the B identification right there, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And then you square these numbers, so you 8 times 8 is 64, and 13 times 13 will give you 169. According to the formula, you need to add those values, so 64 plus 169 is 233, and that is the answer of x squared. So to find what x is, we need to undo the squaring. So for that, we're going to do the square root of 233, and that's going to equal your x. So when you type that in the calculator, it becomes a decimal and it rounds up to 15.3. Let me show you that in case you need to see an example of that. And if we do the square root of 233, it's 15.2643, so that's 15.3 if you round it. All right, so those two could be the possible answers, either in decimal form or radical form. Number 2 is similar, so I'll let you try that on your own. Number 3 is missing a leg, so let's go over that example. When I draw the L with my highlighter, I notice that X is part of the leg, so I'm going to either label that A or B, it doesn't matter. So 7 squared plus X squared equals C squared. So C is always across the 90-degree, so it's going to be 9 squared right there. And then we square those numbers, so 7 times 7 is 49, and then 9 times 9 is 81. So here you have an example where 49 plus some missing value equals 81. So that means you need to subtract 49 from this side to eliminate and isolate that part. So 81 minus 49 gives you 32. And that's what x squared represents. So to find x by itself, you need to do the square root of 32. And that will give you your x. When you type that in the calculator, it rounds it to 5.7. Now this square root of 32 opens the door to the topic of simplifying radicals. We mentioned it a little bit, and we will see it again in another video. Simplifying radicals is whenever you look at the number you have inside of the radical sign and factor it out to its primes. So think of factors that will give you 32. For example, 4 times 8 gives you 32. Keep breaking down those factors until you can't anymore. So 4 becomes 2 times 2. And those cannot be broken more other than 1 times 2. And then 8 becomes 4 times 2. 2 cannot be broken down more. And then 4 does become again 2 times 2. So these numbers, when they can be separated or factored out even more, those are called prime numbers. So what you want to do is you want to turn that square root of 32 into its prime numbers. So that means we have a total of 2 times itself 5 times. And then the square root, what it does is that it's asking you for what number times itself is in there. So you have this number times itself, and then you have this number times itself. So you're identifying pairs of prime numbers, and you're going to take them out of the radical. When these numbers come out, you're saying that 2 was inside the radical 2 times in here. And then this 2 next to that is also saying that there was another pair of 2's in here. This little one by itself, it's not going to come out of the radical, so it stays inside. And then now this simplifies to 2 times 2, which is 4, and then 4 square root of 2 is the answer for the simplified version of square root of 32. So like I said, there'll be a video solely on that whenever we go over that. Okay, so I'm going to just annotate that 4 square root of 2 is also an answer there. Okay, number 4 is similar to number 3, so I'll let you try that on your own. Number 5 is puzzle-like, as I mentioned, since it's composite figures. 2 triangles are put together, and they're asking you for the height of this big triangle. And through the information given, you have enough information to create a formula to find that missing side. So you need to envision that this and this creates the legs of a right triangle, or you could have gone the other way, it's the same. But you also have to analyze that because this is an isosceles triangle, and this is 24 on this side as well. 22 is pretty much cut in half with this altitude. So that's 11 on this side and 11 on that side. So you're looking at a triangle that is formed with 11 on this side and 24 on this side, and your job is to find that missing height. And the L is showing that the x is a leg, so we're going to have 11 squared plus x squared equals 24 squared. And then we do the math for that, and we're going to have 121 plus x squared equals 576. As mentioned above, when you're missing a leg, you subtract that value. So 121 is subtracted from 576, and you end up with 455. That is not your answer. That is what you have to now square root. So square root of 455 is what x will represent, which results, according to the calculator, into 21.3. So again, it's puzzle-like because you have to think a little bit based on the information given. What do you do to find a little right triangle created? Or can you create a right triangle to help you find that missing side with Pythagorean theorem? So number 6 was a little bit challenging for some students to visualize how to break this figure down, since they could break it down in different ways. They could create a triangle like this, draw a line that goes from that corner to that corner, and then over here it creates that right triangle right there. However, you need 2 sides in order to find a missing side. So to find that x, you would have had to be given this side and that side, and we're not. Another way that people broke it down is this way, but same thing. To find this missing side, you needed to have been given 2 sides, the 5 right here and this side, and you're not. So then they look at, why is this 16 there? Well, they could probably use this 16 right here, because that looks like a slanted hypotenuse, maybe. And we could use this x right here, and there is a right triangle right there. However, the top is no longer 18, since the whole thing is 18, and this part's 5. We could envision this being a rectangle, where this is 5 and that is 5. So this part right here will have to be 13. So we can kind of dash a line going up and say that this part right here is 5, and this part right here is 13. So the triangle that we're working with looks like this, where it has 13 on this side, 16 on this side, and we don't know that part. And that's your L. So that means you're missing a side, a leg. So it's 13 squared plus x squared equals 16 squared. And then you do the math to find for x. I'll just go through it super fast. That way you can either pause the video, do the math, and then check if your answer is correct. This is not the hard part. The hard part is setting up the formula correctly, identifying what is the leg, what is the hypotenuse, and the math is just repetitive. So now we're going to do the square root of 87 to find what x is. So x ends up being 9.3. Okay, so again, as we go through this video, pause it, do the math, and then press play so you can see if you got the questions right. All right, so this next question, another one similar to analyzing what you're given. You have all these measures and you're looking for what is the whole thing. So right away, students said, oh, we could just do two separate triangles, and that is correct. You have a triangle created on this side with 14 and 12 and this missing part. And then you have a triangle created over here that looks like this with the 29 and the 12 again, and we're missing this side. So if I highlight this, you're missing a leg on both. But since you want the whole thing, whatever these measures are, you're going to have to add them at the end in order to get your final answer. So again, pause the video, do the math, and then check if you got it right. So for the first one, you will write it as 12 squared plus x squared equals 14 squared. And I don't want you to confuse this x with this x, so I'm just going to label it b. That way it's a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So 12 times 12 is 144. 14 squared is 196. Subtract 144. And again, I'm only going fast because I have the key right in front of me. So please pause the video, do the math, then check your work to see if you got it right. So b equals square root of 52. And then 7.2 is the answer for this part only. For the other one, we're going to do 12 squared plus b squared equals 29 squared. Then we have 144 plus b squared equals 841. Subtract 144 from that. And we get 697. Square root of 697 will give you your missing value, and that is 26.4. So we're going to get 26.4, and then when you add 7.2, this part is 7.2, plus 26.4, you end up with 33.6. So that is the answer to what x is. Okay. The next two problems are also puzzles because they are composite figures. And based on the examples we've done, you should be able to understand how to figure this out. So just to make the video short, I'm just going to give you the answers for you to check that you did it right. So in this case, pause the video, do the work, and then press play when you're ready. So the answer you should have gotten here was x equals 16.1. If you didn't get that and you need my clarification, come see me in class. And then this missing value right here ended up being 18.7. So do the math, make sure you guys get to those answers and celebrate that you get it. Let's move on to the application part, which is just reading the scenario, making a sketch if you need to, so you can understand what is your A and B and C value to find that missing side. So a roofer leaned a 16-foot ladder against a house. I am visual, so I'm just gonna draw a random house. Lean a ladder against that house and like 16 feet. So I'm gonna write 16. And it says that the base of the ladder is 5 feet from the house. So I'm gonna write here are 5. How high up the house does the ladder reach? So it's asking for the height. This is what they don't know. So the triangle that was created is this, x, 5, 16. And as mentioned, if you get used to drawing your L with your highlighter, that quickly identifies your legs. So you end up writing this formula, 5 squared plus x squared equals 16 squared. So then you have 25 plus x squared equals 256. You subtract the 25 because you're missing a leg, and you end up with 231. So then you're going to do the square root of 231, and that results in 15.2. So 15.2 feet is how high the ladder has to go against the house. Again, try the next problems and see if you got them right. Pause the video before you see the answers. Don't cheat. Okay, number 11, saying that it's building a rectangular deck, so rectangle right there. Dimensions of the rectangular deck are 10 and 23, so 10 and 23. What is the length of the diagonal? So whichever way you draw your diagonal, it creates a right triangle. So the L that I'm going to use is that one. I know that this is also a 10. And both values are given, so it's just 10 squared plus 23 squared equals your C squared, because that's what you don't know. A squared, B squared, C squared. 10 squared is 100. 23 squared is 529. So this results in 629 when you add them. And the square root of 629 is 25.1. So that's how much the distance is diagonally. For the next one, this was tricky for many of you because of the east and south descriptions. So north, south, east, west. And through life experience, you should be familiar that in the United States, the East Coast is where New York is at, and the West Coast is where California is at. So just visualize that in case you forget how the direction goes. So Ashley jogged 3.4 miles east. So if she's standing somewhere and she's going to go east, she's going to go this way, 3.4 miles. And then she's going to go south. Then she's going to go south this way, 5.7 miles. How far is Ashley from her starting point? This is her starting point, and this is where she is now. So it's asking for how far is that distance from when she started. So that creates that right triangle. You're going to use those values as your legs. So 3.4 square, 5.7 square equals C squared. And if you use the calculator to square these, 3.4 times 3.4 is 11.56. 5.7 times 5.7 is 32.49. If you add those two values, you should get 44.05. And then to get the final answer, you have to do the square root of 44.05. And then that results in 6.6. Okay, last problem. 31-foot support wire is attached from the top of a 25-foot telephone pole. So here's the telephone pole, here's the wire, 31 feet wire, here's the ground, here's the pole, and the pole is 25. And how far from the base of the pole does the wire meet the ground? So here's where the wire meets, and here's where is what they want to know. How far away is that? If you draw the L, those are your legs. So we have a missing leg. 25 squared plus x squared equals 31 squared. And through the practice that you've been doing, you should understand by now that you're going to subtract that value from that. So 25 times 25 is 625. And 31 times 31 is 961. Subtract 625. And the answer right here is 336. It's not the final answer. You still got to do the square root of 336 to find out what x is. And that results in 18.3. Okay, I hope this video helped you understand Pythagorean theorem a little better.